Next, let's dive in and create our actual WebSockets. Did everybody get this far? Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time.
There's a couple people reporting that they're getting a permission denied for the public key when they or the SSH public key could not read from the remote repository.
That's strange. That's public. Yeah, it could be you don't have your SSH key set up for Git. Not everybody does. So if that's the case, you can use HTTPS and then use your username and password. But if you have two-factor auth, it won't work for that, which is why we use SSH for everything. So if you're running into an error for public key, that's probably it. Your SSH key isn't working correctly. Or it may not be set up on your actual home machine if you've never used GitHub before. Okay. And if you clone that repo, you'll see we did exactly that. And here's where the WebSocket server things come in. I'm going to drag this off to the side so I can remember what I did, because I don't have this stuff remembered off the top of my head. I'm not that smart. I'm sorry. But let's walk through it together, because I want everybody to understand what we're doing here. So I'm just going to move that off over here. We're going to jump back into our repo here, assuming your application is working. So this is the server we're going to be using for the rest of the day. And we're going to use it to write a database as well. So I want to make sure my code is segmented in a way that makes sense and is reasonable. So I'm just going to say /*, begin WebSockets. And remember, you won't remember most of the stuff later. So it's always good to either comment your code or leave some breadcrumbs for yourself to be like, okay, I went through this step and I went through this step, I went through this step. So let's start with a WebSocket. We will need one library for this because, believe me, you do not want to write a WebSocket by hand. It's not that fun. We're going to use a library, and it's really, really basic. And it's called WS. As straightforward as it can get. So let's say npm inst I WS. It's just a WebSocket server. It'll make dealing with WebSockets much easier. So once you have that installed, let's create the actual WebSocket server. So we'll say const, be real original name, WebSocket server equals require WS, and we want a server from WS. And then we want to actually give that connection a name. So we're going to say const WSS equals a new WebSocket server. And the server is just going to be the server that we created above. And this server is just this server. We're just saying attach the WebSocket to the server we created with Express earlier. Next, WebSocket has this idea of, or has this concept of different states, very similar to an HTTP request, but we want to do actions when the WebSocket actually connects. So to do that, we're going to use listeners, and we're going to say WebSocket on initial connection. So the minute somebody connects to our server from a browser, we want to do something. So we want to make it respond with a function. And I close it off early. There we go. And the function won't really, it's going to take in WSS. Or, wait, nope, sorry, I missed one. It's a connection. And then it's going to take in WS, the WebSocket library itself. That'll just make it easier to parse through a little bit later. Close that off. Love syntax highlighting. Okay, so we created a listener, we created a WebSocket server attached to our Express server, and we gave it a function called connection that will run every time it connects to a new server. We could have written this differently. We could have made this its own const function, but just as easy. Next, what do we want to happen whenever someone connects to our web server? why don't we just log it and say like, hey, someone connects to our web server. So we're going to create a shortcut. There's something called, within the WebSocket server, there's some data, and one of those is clients, and one of those is size. And that's just the number of clients we have currently connected to our web server. So let's assign this to a variable, and we'll call it num clients. And when something happens, it's good to know what's going on. Otherwise, we would never know what's happening on our server if we don't log it. So let's create a log, and we'll just say clients connected. And I'll just pass in the num clients. So this just means every time someone connects, it'll just say this person connected. We have 10 clients. We have 1 client. We have 1,000. Just lets us know in our log what's going on. So now we can use a special command called the broadcast command. And the broadcast command is pretty cool because it's going to send a message to everybody connected. So rather than us having to iterate through every single client, broadcast will do that for us. So just for this exercise, I want every time someone connects, I want everybody to know about it. So we're going to say broadcast the current visitors, current visitor count, current visitors. And we'll just say num clients. And we'll just add a little colon there just to make it look nice. OK, so we created a function that's going to handle a connection that every time someone connects, it's going to broadcast out to everybody that's connected the number of clients we have. So we still need to handle a few states. So a socket can be open, closed, or errored. We need to handle these different states. So we don't need to handle them, but it's good to do something when a WebSocket connects just to prove it's connected. Now this is where we can get super creative, but for this demo, we'll keep it really simple. So we're going to say WebSocket on, or we're actually going to pull from WS here because these are steady states. And we see closed, open. So we'll say open, or my mistake, ready state, which is saying what's the state of the WebSocket. And when that equals ws.open, this is an if. We're just going to send a message to that one client that's connected. Welcome to my server. So in this case, we're reading from the WS library itself, which is attached to every single connection. WS is going to have a state for every connection. And we're just going to pull from that enum of different connection states. We're going to use the open one. So when a WebSocket connects and it's open, we're going to send to the client, welcome to my server. And when that connection closes, so we'll say on close. So when a client closes out, we'll give it a function. We'll call it close. We don't need to name it, but it's just good for logging later to name your functions, not keep them anonymous. We're just going to say console.log. A client has disconnected. And if we want to add a little bit more spice, we can broadcast that the client is disconnected to all the clients if we want. And that's about it. However, I did make a mistake. I keep getting excited and I jumped ahead of myself. We have to write the broadcast function. That's not something that exists. So normally, if you want to talk to every client, you have to say websocket.each and go through. You have to iterate through them. Why don't we just make a function that does that for us? And we'll just call it broadcast, which is the function we already used. So we'll define it here. We'll attach it to WSS. That equals a function. And we'll call it broadcast, because it's good to name our functions. And broadcast is going to take some sort of input or data. So now we say clients, it's an iterable, so we can say each or for each. And that takes a function as well. And each, again, we don't have to name it, we just do. For each clients, what do I want to do? And all we're going to do is use that send command. So we're going to say clients, send, whatever data we have. And that's it. And that's a lot. Writing a quick function is a lot faster than trying to do WSS clients each time.